Captain Kim Dae-ho stood on the bridge of the human warship Indomitable and watched the stars through the main viewing screen. The ship moved through space at the edge of known territory where few beings dared to travel. Space here was dark and cold and full of dangers that most alien species preferred to avoid. The humans called this area the Outer Rim, and they patrolled it because someone had to do the job that others found too scary. Kim Dae-ho was a tall man with short black hair and scars on his hands from the old water wars on Earth. He had been in space for 20 years and had seen things that would make most aliens run away screaming. Today felt different, though. The captain could not explain why, but something in the air made him feel like trouble was coming. Navigator Park So-min sat at her station and checked the ship's position for the third time in an hour. She was young for her rank with bright eyes that missed nothing. Her fingers moved quickly over the control panel as she made sure they stayed on course. Park So-min had grown up on Mars colony, where the air was thin and the storms could kill you in minutes. Space did not scare her much. Communications officer Lee Tae-woo turned in his chair and looked at the captain. Lee was a quiet man who listened to radio signals from across the galaxy. His job was to hear things that others missed, and today he had been hearing strange sounds from the direction of the Nexus border. Static and broken signals that made no sense but felt wrong somehow. The other crew members worked at their stations, in the quiet way that humans did when they were far from home. Chief Medical Officer Yoon Hae-young checked her medical supplies in case someone got hurt. Weapons Specialist Choi Jin-woo ran tests on the ship's guns to make sure they would fire when needed. Everyone did their job because that was what humans did even when they were scared. Earth had joined the Galactic Federation 47 years ago, but the other species still did not trust humans very much. They called Earth a death world because everything there tried to kill you. The weather was too hot or too cold. The animals had teeth and claws. The plants had poison. Even the bacteria could make you sick. Most aliens could not understand how anything could live on such a terrible planet. What the aliens did not understand was that living on a death world made humans strong. When you grew up dodging hurricanes and earthquakes and wild animals, you learned to think fast and move faster. You learned that sometimes you had to fight even when you were scared. You learned that protecting your family and friends was more important than staying safe. The Federation gave humans the job of patrolling the Outer Rim because no one else wanted to do it. The work was dangerous and lonely, and most species thought it was a waste of time. The humans took the job anyway because someone had to watch for trouble, and humans were good at handling trouble. Lee Tae-woo suddenly sat up straight in his chair and put his hand to his earpiece. His face went pale as he listened to something that made his eyes go wide. The captain noticed right away because Lee never looked scared. "Captain," Lee said in a voice that was barely steady, "I am getting a distress signal." "Where from?" "Kim," Dae-ho asked as he walked over to Lee's station. "The Viridian system," Lee replied while his fingers worked to clean up the signal. "It is coming from Viridian Prime. The message is in Villani." Park So-min looked up from her navigation screen. The Villani were one of the peaceful species in the Federation. They looked like tall, thin people with blue skin and big eyes, but they were fragile and gentle. They spent their time studying plants and making art. They had never hurt anyone in their entire history. "What does the message say?" the captain asked. Lee worked on the translation program, and the words appeared on the main screen. Everyone on the bridge could read them now, and what they saw made their blood run cold. "This is Thala 9 of the Viridian Research Station, calling anyone who can hear this message. Our world is under attack. Ships with red markings came out of nowhere and started shooting at our cities. We have no weapons to fight back. Our people are dying. Please help us. Anyone who gets this message, please help us. We do not have much time left." The bridge went very quiet. Kim Dae-ho felt his stomach drop as he read the words again. The Villani had no military at all. They were herbivores who ate plants and would not even kill insects. If someone was attacking them, it would be like shooting children. "How far away are they?" the captain asked Park So-min. She was already working on the calculations. Her face was serious as she ran the numbers. 18 hours at maximum speed, she said. "But Captain, that would mean pushing the engines past safe limits." What about Federation ships? Kim Dae-ho asked. Are there any closer than us? Lee checked the communication channels and shook his head. The nearest Federation patrol is 3 days away. Even if they left right now, they would not get there in time. Weapons Specialist Choi Jin-woo spoke up from his station. Captain, I am reading the attack patterns from the signal. Whoever is doing this has heavy ships, military-grade weapons. This is not pirates or raiders, this is a real invasion. Kim Dae-ho closed his eyes and thought about what he should do. Federation rules said that human ships were supposed to stay in their patrol areas unless they got direct orders to move. Breaking those rules could mean a court-martial. It could mean the end of his career and maybe prison time. But the rules also said that Federation members were supposed to help each other when they could. The Villani were dying right now while he stood here thinking about regulations. Captain, Park So-min said quietly, if we leave now, we might be able to help them. The Federation will not like it if we abandon our patrol, Lee warned. They already think humans are too violent and unpredictable. Yoon Ha-young looked up from her medical station. The Villani have families, she said simply. Children and elders who cannot fight back. Choi Jin-woo checked his weapons one more time. We have enough firepower to make a difference, he said. Maybe not enough to win, but enough to help. Kim Dae-ho opened his eyes and looked at his crew. These were good people who had chosen to serve in the most dangerous part of space because someone had to do it. They were humans, which meant they understood what it felt like to be helpless and afraid. They knew what it was like when bad things happened and no one came to help. The captain made his decision. Set course for Viridian Prime, he ordered. Maximum speed. Park So-min's fingers flew over her controls. Course laid in, Captain, engines at full power. Lee, send a message to Federation Command. Tell them we are responding to a distress call. What about our patrol route? Lee asked. The patrol route can wait, Kim Dae-ho said. People are dying. The ship turned toward the Viridian system and jumped to faster than light speed. Behind them, their patrol area sat empty for the first time in years. Ahead of them lay a world under attack and people who needed help that might not come in time. As the stars streaked past the viewing screen, Kim Dae-ho wondered if he was making the right choice. The Federation would be angry. His superiors would probably demote him or worse. But when he thought about the Villani families hiding in their homes while bombs fell from the sky, he knew he could not live with himself if he did nothing. That was the thing about being human. Sometimes doing the right thing was more important than following the rules. Sometimes you had to risk everything to help people you had never met. It was what made humans different from most other species in the galaxy. It was also what made them dangerous. The Indomitable dropped out of faster than light speed at the edge of the Viridian system, and everyone on the bridge saw hell. 3 massive ships with red markings hung in space above the blue-green world like giant metal vultures. Smaller attack. Ships swarmed around the planet, shooting down at the cities below. Explosions bloomed on the surface like deadly flowers, and smoke rose into the atmosphere. Captain Kim Dae-ho gripped the arms of his command chair as he watched the destruction. The attacking ships were bigger than anything in the human fleet, and their weapons turned buildings into dust. Worst of all, he could see small Villani transport ships trying to escape the planet, only to be hunted down and destroyed by enemy fighters. Scan those ships, he ordered Choi Jin-woo. The weapons specialist worked quickly at his station. Captain, they are Korthak design. Heavy cruisers with plasma cannons and missile launchers. The smaller ships are fighters with energy weapons. Park So-min looked up from her navigation screen with worry in her eyes. Captain, there are 40 enemy ships and only one of us. Kim Dae-ho had heard of the Korthak Empire but had never seen their ships before. They were a warrior race from the far side of the galaxy who believed that might made right. They conquered weaker species and made them into slaves. What he could not understand was why they would attack the Villani who had nothing worth stealing. Sir, Lee Tae-woo called out, I am getting more signals from the planet. The Villani are begging for help. The captain listened to the translated messages that filled the communication channels. Families trapped in burning buildings, children crying for their parents, elders too old to run asking someone to save the young ones. It was the sound of a peaceful people facing extinction. Status of our weapons? Kim Dae-ho asked. All systems ready, Choi Jin-woo replied. But Captain, we cannot fight all of them at once. We do not have to fight all of them, the captain said. We just have to make them think twice about what they are doing. On the main viewing screen, one of the Korthak cruisers turned its guns toward a city full of civilian shelters. Kim Dae-ho could see the weapons charging up for another bombardment. In a few seconds, thousands more innocent people would die. That decides it, he said. All fighters launch now. Target the enemy ships attacking civilian areas. Lieutenant Jang Min-ho led the human fighter squadron out of the Indomitable's launch bay. He was a young pilot who had grown up racing speeders through the asteroid fields around Earth. Flying in combat was just racing with higher stakes. His fighters spread out in an attack formation that looked random to alien eyes, but made perfect sense to humans. The Korthak had been so focused on bombing helpless cities that they did not notice the human ships until it was too late. Jang Min-ho dove his fighter straight at one of the big cruisers at a speed that would have killed most alien pilots. He fired his weapons at point-blank range and rolled away just as the enemy ship's shields exploded. The other human pilots followed his lead and attacked with a fury that shocked the Korthak commanders. These small human ships moved like they were alive. They twisted and turned through space in ways that seemed impossible. They flew through their own weapons fire and came out the other side shooting. War-Prime Gasktor commanded the Korthak fleet from his flagship. He was a large reptilian creature with scales like armor and teeth like knives. His species had evolved from predators, but they were ambush hunters who preferred to attack weak prey. They had never faced anything like humans before. What are these creatures? He growled as he watched his ships take damage from the tiny human fighters. How do they fly like that? His tactical officer was a smaller Korthak named Vrex Khan, who had studied alien species. They are humans, War-Prime, from the planet Earth. Our intelligence says their world is classified as a death world. Gasktor laughed, which sounded like rocks grinding together. Death world or not, they are just one ship. Order all fighters to destroy them. But the human pilots were already causing more damage than should have been possible. They flew in patterns that made no sense to the Korthak, who were used to fighting in straight lines. When the enemy fighters tried to chase them, the humans would suddenly reverse direction or dive toward the planet's gravity well at speeds that should have torn their ships apart. Engineering Chief Nam Ki-young pushed the Indomitable's engines beyond their safety limits to keep up with the fast-moving battle. She was a small woman with strong hands who had learned to fix machines in the deep mines of Europa, where one mistake meant death. Making engines run past their limits was just another day at work for her. Captain, she called over the ship's communication system. I can give you 20 minutes at full power before we risk a core breach. Make it 30, Kim Dae-ho replied as he watched his fighters dance through enemy fire. The tide of battle started to change when Tactical Officer Shin Yoon-ji found a weakness in the Korthak formation. She was a quiet woman who saw patterns where others saw chaos. Her job was to find the best way to hurt the enemy while keeping her own people alive. Captain, she said, the big ships are trying to protect each other, but they are getting in each other's way. If we hit them from 3 different angles at once, they cannot cover all their weak spots. Kim Dae-ho smiled grimly. Do it. The Indomitable charged straight at the nearest Korthak cruiser, while the fighters attacked from above and below. The enemy ship tried to turn its heavy guns on the human ship, but it was too slow. Human weapons were smaller than Korthak weapons, but they fired faster and hit harder than anything the aliens expected. Explosions ripped through the Korthak shields and tore holes in their armor. The big ship started to list to one side as its engines failed. Other enemy ships tried to help, but the humans were already moving to their next target. Impossible, Gasktor snarled as he watched his fleet take damage. They fight like they do not care if they die. Perhaps they do not, Vrexcon suggested. Our intelligence says humans evolved on a world where death was always close. Maybe they are used to fighting hopeless battles. The War-Prime ordered his ships to fall back and regroup, but the humans pressed their attack. They flew through clouds of debris and dodged missiles that exploded close enough to shake their ships apart. When their shields failed, they kept fighting. When their weapons overheated, they found new ways to attack. On the planet below, The Villani watched the space battle. In amazement, Elder Vash 12 stood in the ruins of his research station and could not believe what he was seeing. Someone had actually come to help them. These strange, violent creatures from the death world called Earth were risking their lives to save people they had never met. Why? He whispered to himself. Why would they do this for us? The answer came in the form of more human fighters diving through the atmosphere to attack Korthak ground forces. The pilots used their ships like weapons and crashed them into enemy positions when they ran out of ammunition. They ejected at the last second and landed fighting with hand weapons that seemed too big for their small bodies. After an hour of brutal fighting, the Korthak fleet was down to half strength and their ground forces were in retreat. Gasktor could not believe that one human ship had caused so much damage. His warriors were tough and experienced, but these humans fought like demons from the void. War Prime, his communications officer reported. We are getting reports from other sectors. More human ships are on their way. That was a lie, but the Korthak did not know it. Kim Dae-ho had ordered Lee Tae-woo to broadcast fake radio chatter that made it sound like a whole human fleet was coming. The trick worked because the Korthak were already shaken by how hard the humans had hit them. Fall back, Gasktor ordered reluctantly. We will return with more ships. The Korthak fleet limped away from Viridian Prime, leaving behind burning wrecks and confused survivors. They had come to conquer a helpless world and instead had met something they did not understand. Humans who fought without fear and protected strangers like they were family. As the enemy ships disappeared into hyperspace, Captain Kim Dae-ho allowed himself a moment to breathe. His ship was damaged, and half his fighters were gone, but they had saved the Villani homeworld. It was a victory, but he knew it was only the beginning. Sir, Lee Tae-woo said quietly, I am getting a message from the Villani. The translation came through as a simple phrase repeated over and over by thousands of voices. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Kim Dae-ho looked at his crew and saw the same mixture of exhaustion and pride on every face. They had done something that the Federation would call reckless and dangerous. They had also done something that was right. The Korthak would be back, and next time they would bring more ships. The humans had won this battle, but the war was just beginning. News of the human victory at Viridian Prime spread through the galaxy faster than anyone expected. In the halls of the Federation Council on distant Centauri Station, the debate raged for hours. Some council members called Captain Kim Dae-ho a hero while others wanted him arrested for disobeying orders. The argument grew so loud that security had to be called to keep the representatives from fighting each other. Admiral Velthera of the Zenthari Defense Force was one of the loudest voices demanding punishment. She was a tall, blue-skinned alien, with 4 arms and no patience for human unpredictability. Her species believed in following rules and keeping order above all else. These humans are dangerous, she declared to the council. They ignore orders and start fights without permission. Today they attack the Korthak. Tomorrow they might attack us. But other voices spoke in favor of the humans. Ambassador Kryn Vel of the Aquatic Collective had seen what happened when no one helped species under attack. His own world had been raided by pirates for years before someone finally stopped them. At least the humans do something, he said. How many distress calls do we ignore because the paperwork takes too long? How many worlds burn while we debate in committees? The argument might have gone on for days, but it was interrupted by urgent news from the Outer Rim. Intelligence Officer Kwon Hyun-woo of the Indomitable had been busy analyzing the data they captured from the Korthak attack. What he found made everyone stop talking about regulations. Kwon was a thin man with glasses who spent most of his time reading enemy communications and trying to figure out what they were planning next. He had learned to speak 7 alien languages and could break most military codes. When he sent his report to Federation Command, the message was marked with the highest priority level. The Korthak attack on Viridian Prime had not been random. It was a test to see how the Federation would respond to attacks on helpless worlds. Intelligence showed that the Korthak Empire was planning to invade the entire Outer Rim within the next 6 months. They wanted to conquer or destroy every peaceful species they could find. This changes everything. Admiral Velthara admitted when she read the report. If the Korthak are planning a war of extermination, we need to stop them. But stopping the Korthak would not be easy. Their empire controlled hundreds of worlds, and their military was built for conquest. Worse yet, most Federation members were, like the Villani. They were scientists and artists and farmers who had never learned to fight. The few military species were spread too thin to defend everyone. On Viridian Prime, the humans were learning just how different they were from the people they had saved. Dr. Song Ji-hai was a xenobiologist who studied alien life forms. She had come down to the planet to help with medical care and was amazed by what she found. The Villani were everything the reports said they were. Gentle plant eaters who spent their time creating beautiful art and studying the mysteries of nature. They had large eyes that saw colors humans could not imagine, and long fingers perfect for delicate work. They were also completely helpless when violence came to their world. I do not understand, Elder Vash 12 said to Dr. Song as they walked through the ruins of his city. How do your people fight like that? How do you fly into danger without fear? Dr. Song looked at the destruction around them and tried to explain, something that most aliens could never understand. Earth is different from most worlds, she said. Everything there wants to kill you. The weather, the animals, even the plants. We learned to fight because we had to. But you came here to help strangers, Vash 12 pointed out. Your people risked their lives for us, and we cannot give you anything in return. That is exactly why we came, Dr. Song replied. Where we come, from you, protect the weak because someday you might be weak too. You help others because someday you might need help. The elder looked confused by this idea. On Viridian Prime, resources were plentiful, and the climate was mild. The Villani had never faced extinction or learned to see enemies everywhere. They could not imagine living on a world where kindness was also a survival skill. While Dr. Song tried to explain human nature to the Villani captain, Kim Dae-ho was dealing with more immediate problems. His ship was damaged, and his crew was exhausted. Worst of all, he was getting angry messages from Federation Command, demanding to know why he had abandoned his patrol. Sir, Communications Officer Lee Tae-woo said as he brought the latest transmission to the captain. Admiral Velthara wants to speak with you personally. Kim Dae-ho read the message and sighed. He knew this conversation would not go well. The Admiral was known for following regulations and punishing officers who broke them. When her image appeared on the main screen, her forearms were crossed and her expression was cold. Captain Kim, you have violated direct orders and engaged in unauthorized combat, she said without any greeting. I should have you arrested and court-martialed. With respect, Admiral, the Villani needed help, Kim Dae-ho replied. We were the only ship close enough to respond. That is not your decision to make, Velthara snapped. We have protocols for a reason. You cannot just attack whoever you want, whenever you feel like it. The captain felt his temper rising but kept his voice level. The protocols would have let the Villani die while we waited for permission to save them. Better that than starting a war without authorization. Kim Dae-ho stared at the Admiral for a long moment. This was the difference between humans and most other Federation species. When faced with people in danger, humans acted first and worried about permission later. Other species worried about permission first and sometimes never acted at all. Admiral, he said carefully, the war was already started. The Korthak began it when they attacked helpless civilians. We just made sure they did not finish it. Before Velthara could respond, the conversation was interrupted by another message. This one came from Earth and carried the personal seal of Admiral Ryu Seung-hwan of the Terran Defense Force. When his image appeared on screen next to the Zenthari Admiral, everyone could see the difference between them. Ryu was an older human with gray hair and scars from decades of military service. He had fought in the Titan Rebellion and the Belt Wars before humanity joined the Federation. His eyes were hard but kind, and when he spoke, other humans listened. Admiral Velthara, he said politely. I have been following the situation at Viridian Prime. My government wishes to commend Captain Kim for his quick thinking and heroic actions. The Zenthari Admiral looked surprised. Admiral Ryu, your officer, violated Federation regulations. Surely you do not approve of such reckless behavior. I approve of protecting innocent life, Ryu replied, which is what Captain Kim did. As for regulations, my reading of Federation law says that members are required to render aid to other members under attack. Captain Kim followed the law. While the two admirals argued about regulations and responsibility, pilot Han Yu-jin was leading reconnaissance missions to gather intelligence on Korthak movements. He was a young man who had learned to fly in the dangerous asteroid fields around Mars Colony. Scouting enemy territory was just another form of racing through obstacles that could kill you. What he found was worse than anyone expected. Long range, sensors showed Korthak fleets gathering in 3 different sectors. Supply ships were moving weapons and troops toward the Federation border. Most frightening of all, spy satellites detected the construction of planet-killer weapons designed to destroy entire worlds. Captain, Han reported when he returned to the Indomitable, they are planning something big. Really big. This is not just an invasion. They want to wipe out every peaceful species in this part of the galaxy. Kim Dae-ho felt a chill run down his spine as he read the reconnaissance report. The Korthak were not just planning to conquer the Outer Rim, they were planning genocide, on a scale that had not been seen for centuries. The Federation was about to face an enemy that wanted to destroy everything it stood for. Sir, Weapons Specialist Choi Jin-woo said from his station. What are our orders? The captain looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew. These were good people who had already risked everything to save strangers. Now they were being asked to risk even more to stop something much bigger than one. Burning world. We do what humans do, Kim Dae-ho said simply. We stand between the monsters and the innocent. We fight until we cannot fight anymore. In the distance, space was already filling with ships as the Korthak Empire prepared for war. But Earth was also mobilizing its forces. Admiral Ryu was organizing what he called training exercises that happened to be heading toward the Outer Rim. Other species inspired by human courage were also beginning to move. The galaxy was about to see what happened when Deathworlders went to war to protect their friends. The Korthak Warfleet arrived at Viridian Prime expecting to find a conquered world and scattered wreckage from one small human ship. Instead, they found Captain Kim Dae-ho waiting for them with reinforcements that made War Prime Gasktor question everything he thought he knew about warfare. Admiral Ryu Seung-hwan's training fleet had arrived just 6 hours before the Korthak assault began. The human ships formed a defensive line around Viridian Prime that looked almost casual to alien eyes but was actually a carefully planned killing field. The humans had learned to fight in the asteroid fields around Earth where every rock could hide an enemy and every shadow could mean death. Impossible, Gasktor growled as his sensors counted the human ships. Our intelligence said they had only one vessel in this sector. His tactical officer Vrex Khan studied the readings with growing alarm. War Prime, there are 40 human ships arranged in a defensive formation. They also have allies. The Korthak commander could see the allied ships on his viewing screen. Insectoid Klixar warrior drones buzzed around the human fleet like angry hornets. A few Federation ships had abandoned their posts to join the fight despite orders to stay away. Even, some of the Villani had armed their research vessels with improvised weapons. It does not matter, Gasktor declared. We have 200 ships and planet-killer weapons. These Deathworlders cannot stop us all. But the humans had learned something important during their first battle with the Korthak. The enemy was strong and well-armed, but they fought like most military species. They used standard formations and predictable tactics. They expected their enemies to do the same. Admiral Ryu had spent his career fighting pirates and rebels who did not follow standard tactics. He knew that sometimes the best way to win was to do something so crazy that the enemy could not plan for it. His fleet was about to demonstrate why humans were considered unpredictable even by Federation standards. The battle began when Korthak long-range missiles filled space with deadly fire. Most species would have tried to shoot down the missiles or hide behind their shields. The humans did something different. They flew straight at the missiles and used them as cover to get closer to the enemy ships. Lieutenant Jang Min-ho led his fighter squadron through a cloud of explosions that should have killed them all. The pilots used the blast waves to increase their speed and the debris to hide their approach. When they emerged from the chaos, they were already inside the Korthak defensive perimeter. How do they fly through their own weapons fire? Vrex Khan asked in amazement as he watched human fighters dance between enemy guns. They are insane, Gasktor replied. But insanity will not save them from superior numbers. The WarPrime ordered his ships to target the human command vessel, but Admiral Ryu was ready for that move. The human fleet scattered in all directions like a school of fish avoiding a predator. Each ship went to a different part of the battlefield and started attacking whatever targets they could find. This confused the Korthak, who were used to fighting enemies that stayed in formation. Their targeting computers could not keep track of 40 different ships moving in 40 different directions. Every time they focused fire on one human vessel, the others would attack from behind. On the surface of Viridian Prime, Lieutenant Bay Sujin worked with Villani engineer Mira 7 to turn mining equipment into defensive weapons. The Villani had powerful machines for digging tunnels and moving rocks. With some creative modifications, they became artillery that could shoot at ships in orbit. I never thought our excavators could be used for fighting, Mira 7 said as she watched. Her peaceful machines launch projectiles into space. Humans turn everything into weapons when we have to, Bay replied while adjusting the targeting systems. Spoons, rocks, farming tools, anything we can find. The improvised ground defenses caught the Korthak completely by surprise. They had been so focused on the space battle that they forgot to watch for attacks from the planet. Mining charges designed to break apart asteroids tore holes in their landing craft. Construction vehicles rammed into enemy positions with their operators still inside. But the real shock came when the Villani themselves joined the fighting. These gentle plant eaters, who had never hurt anything in their lives, picked up tools and started attacking Korthak soldiers. They were not good at violence, but they were angry about what had been done to their world. Master Chief Odong Hyun led boarding parties onto damaged Korthak ships, where humans proved terrifyingly effective in close combat. The Korthak were larger and stronger, but they had evolved from prey animals. Deep in their genetic memory was the fear of predators with sharp teeth and quick reflexes. Humans had evolved from persistence hunters who chased their prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. In the narrow corridors of enemy ships, this gave them an advantage that no amount of armor could overcome. They moved through the darkness like ghosts and struck without warning. "They hunt us," one Korthak soldier reported before his communication was cut off. "They hunt us like we are prey." The space battle raged for hours with neither side able to gain a decisive advantage. The Korthak had more ships, but the humans had better tactics. Every time the enemy tried to concentrate their forces, the human fleet would split up and attack from unexpected directions. WarPrime Gasktor was growing desperate as his carefully planned invasion turned into chaos. His ships were taking heavy losses and his ground forces were being driven back by civilians with mining equipment. Worst of all, more human ships kept arriving as word of the battle spread. "WarPrime," his communications officer reported. "We are detecting additional Federation vessels on their way to this system." Gasktor made a decision that would haunt him for the rest of his life. If he could not conquer Viridian Prime, he would destroy it completely. His flagship carried a planet cracker weapon designed to shatter worlds into pieces. He would use it to send a message about what happened to species that defied the Korthak Empire. "Charge the planet killer," he ordered. "We will turn this world into an asteroid field." The massive weapon began to power up with energy that could crack a planet's crust and boil away its oceans. It would take several minutes to reach full charge, but once fired, nothing could stop it. The Villani and everyone trying to protect them would die in a burst of unimaginable destruction. Captain Kim Dae-ho saw the energy readings spike on his sensors and knew immediately what the Korthak commander was planning. The planet killer was the most feared weapon in known space. Only a few species were barbaric enough to build them, and fewer still were willing to use them. "All ships," he broadcast on the emergency channel. "The enemy is preparing to destroy the planet. We have to stop that weapon now." Admiral Ryu understood what needed to be done, but he also understood the cost. The planet killer was protected by the strongest shields in the Korthak fleet. Getting close enough to damage it would mean flying through a wall of defensive fire that would destroy any ship that tried. "This is Admiral Ryu to all human vessels," he said calmly. "We came here to protect innocent life. That mission has not changed. All ships attack the flagship. Do not let that weapon charge. The human fleet turned toward the Korthak flagship like a pack of wolves sensing wounded prey. They flew through enemy fire that tore apart their shields and melted their armor. Ships that lost engines kept fighting on momentum. Pilots who lost life support kept flying until they passed out. Commander Lim Jae-sung led the final assault on the planet killer itself. His ship was already heavily damaged, but he pushed it to ramming speed anyway. If he could damage the weapon's focusing array, it might explode when fired and take the entire Korthak fleet with it. "Sir," his navigator called out, "the weapon is almost fully charged. We have maybe 30 seconds. Lim looked at his bridge crew and saw the same determination on every face. They were going to die, but their sacrifice might save millions of innocent lives. It was the kind of choice that humans made when there was no other option. The ship accelerated toward the planet killer while enemy guns tore it apart piece by piece. Lim held his course even as the bridge filled with smoke and sparks. Behind him, other human ships were making the same desperate run, hoping one of them would get through. At the last second, War-Prime Gasktor realized what the humans were trying to do. These crazy Deathworlders were willing to ram his flagship to stop the planet killer. The thought terrified him, because he finally understood that he was fighting an enemy that did not fear death. The planet killer fired just as Lim's ship struck the focusing array. The massive energy beam meant to destroy Viridian Prime instead scattered in all directions as the weapon exploded. The explosion tore through the Korthak flagship and crippled half their remaining fleet. In the aftermath of the blast, space was filled with wreckage from both sides. The Korthak fleet was broken and their leadership was dead or dying. The human fleet had paid a terrible price, but they had saved Viridian Prime and everyone on it. The surviving Korthak ships limped away into hyperspace carrying news of their defeat back to the Empire. They had learned that humans would do anything to protect innocent life, including sacrifice their own lives. It was a lesson that would change how the galaxy saw the species from the death world called Earth. The silence after battle was always the hardest part for survivors. Lieutenant Commander Park So-min floated in her damaged fighter among the wreckage of 2 fleets and tried to process what had just happened. She had been on a reconnaissance mission when Commander Lim Jae-sung made his final run at the planet killer. Now she was the senior surviving officer of a fleet that had saved a world at the cost of almost everything. Captain Kim Dae-ho was gone. Admiral Ryu Seung-hwan was gone. Most of the brave men and women who had answered the Villani distress call were gone, but Viridian Prime still turned peacefully in space, and millions of innocent lives continued because humans had decided that some things were worth dying for. "Commander Park, this is Rescue Control," came a voice over her damaged radio. "Are you receiving?" Park wiped blood from her eyes and tried to focus on her instruments. Half her fighter's systems were offline and her life support was failing, but she was alive. That was more than most of her friends could say. "Receiving Rescue Control," she replied. "What is the status of the fleet?" 12 ships operational, 38 ships lost or destroyed. Casualties are heavy, but we saved the planet. Park closed her eyes and let the numbers sink in. They had started with 50 human ships and now only 12 were left. The price of victory had been higher than anyone wanted to pay, but the alternative would have been genocide. Down on Viridian, Prime Elder Vash 12 stood in the ruins of his capital city and watched human rescue teams pull survivors from collapsed buildings. The Deathworlders worked without rest to save every life they could find. They shared their medical supplies with injured Villani and gave their emergency rations to hungry children. "I still do not understand them," he said to Dr. Song Ji-hee, who was treating wounded civilians with gentle hands that belied her species' violent reputation. "What do you mean?" she asked, while bandaging a Villani youth who had been trapped under rubble for 6 hours. "They came here to save us and so many of them died for it," Vash 12 explained. "We cannot give them anything in return. We have no weapons to help them fight. We have no technology they need. Why would they sacrifice so much for nothing, Dr. Ne?" Song looked up from her patient and smiled sadly. "You are wrong, Elder. You did give us something very valuable. What could we possibly give to beings from a death world? You gave us the chance to be heroes." The Elder did not understand, but he could see that the human doctor believed what she was saying. These strange, violent creatures from Earth seemed to need to protect others the way his people needed to create art or study nature. It was part of what made them who they were. The news of humanity's victory at Viridian Prime spread through the galaxy faster than the previous reports had. This time, the Federation Council did not debate whether the humans had done the right thing. The evidence was clear for everyone to see. A peaceful world had been saved and a genocidal enemy had been stopped. Admiral Velthara of the Zenthari Defense Force stood before the assembled representatives and did something that shocked everyone who knew her rigid personality. She publicly apologized for doubting human methods and recommended that Captain Kim Dae-ho be awarded the Federation's highest honor for valor. "I was wrong about the humans," she admitted to the council. "I thought their violence made them dangerous to peace. I did not understand that their violence makes peace possible." The council voted unanimously to establish new protocols for responding to distress calls. The Viridian Doctrine stated that protection of innocent life took priority over bureaucratic procedures. Ships were authorized to respond to emergencies without waiting for permission from distant commanders. More importantly, the Council recognized that the galaxy needed protectors who were willing to fight when fighting was necessary. The Outer Rim Defense Force was created with humans as its core but open to any species brave enough to stand between predators and prey. On Earth, the families of the fallen received news of their loved ones' sacrifice with the stoic dignity that had carried humanity through centuries of hardship. They mourned their dead, but they also took pride in knowing that those deaths had meaning. Their sons and daughters had died as heroes protecting innocent life. The Korthak Empire received very different news. The broken remnants of War Prime Gasktor's fleet limped home with tales of an enemy that fought like demons. The humans had turned a simple conquest into a disaster that cost the Empire its most powerful fleet and its reputation for invincibility. Emperor Krex Malar listened to the reports with growing anger. The Korthak had ruled through fear for generations. If word spread that they could be defeated by a handful of Deathworld ships, their entire empire might collapse. Something had to be done to restore their reputation. "Double the border patrols," he ordered his generals. "If any human ship crosses into our territory, destroy it immediately. Show the galaxy that the Korthak Empire still has teeth." But privately, the Emperor knew that something had changed. The humans had introduced a new element into galactic politics. They had shown that small numbers of determined fighters could defeat larger forces if they were willing to pay the price. Other species would start to wonder if they too could stand up to bullies and tyrants. 6 months later, Lieutenant Commander Park So-min stood on the bridge of the new starship Indomitable II and looked out at the stars of the Outer Rim. She wore the rank insignia of a full commander now and carried the responsibility of protecting the sector that her friends had died to save. The ship was larger than the original Indomitable and carried a crew drawn from a dozen different species. Humans still made up the majority, but they were joined by Villani scientists, Klixar warriors, and even a few reformed pirates who wanted to fight for something better than personal gain. "Commander," called out Ensign Han Yu-jin from the communications station. He had survived the battle at Viridian Prime and chosen to stay in the Defense Force rather than return to civilian life. "We are receiving a distress call from the Altair system." "What is the nature of the emergency?" Park asked as she settled into the captain's chair that still felt too big for her. "Pirate attack on a civilian convoy. The local authorities are requesting immediate assistance." Park looked around her bridge at the faces of beings from a dozen different worlds who had all chosen to serve together. They came from species that had been enemies or strangers just a few years ago. Now they worked side by side to protect those who could not protect themselves. "Set course for Altair," she ordered. "Maximum speed." The ship turned toward the distant system where people were in danger and needed help. It was the kind of mission that the old Federation might have debated for days while filling out paperwork. The new Federation acted first and worried about regulations later. As the stars blurred past the viewing screen, Park thought about Captain Kim Dae-ho and all the others who had died at Viridian Prime. They had sacrificed their lives to prove that strength should be used to protect the weak rather than exploit them. Their example had inspired an entire galaxy to think differently about what it meant to be civilized. The Indomitable Dooku dropped into hyperspace carrying hope to another world under attack. Behind them, HFY continued its peaceful orbit around its star. Vallani children played and rebuilt cities while their parents worked to create beauty from the ashes of war. In the memorial garden, at the center of the capital city, a simple monument honored the humans who had died to save a world they had never seen. The inscription was written in both Vallani script and Earth Standard. It read, "They came not as conquerors, but as guardians. They asked for nothing, but gave everything. Let all who see this remember that strength without mercy is tyranny, but mercy without strength is empty words." Elder Vash 12 visited the monument every day and tried to understand the creatures who had changed his world. He still could not fully comprehend beings who would die for strangers, but he had learned to be grateful that such beings existed. Young, Vallani would ask him why the humans had sacrificed themselves, and his answer had become legend throughout the Outer Rim. Because that is what Deathworlders do. They die so others can live. They fight so others can know peace. They stand in the darkness so others can see the light. The galaxy had learned that being from a death world did not make humans monsters. It made them the perfect guardians for a universe that needed someone strong enough to fight and caring enough to know when fighting was necessary. In the end, that was humanity's greatest gift to the stars. Not their technology or their weapons, but their willingness to use their strength in service of something greater than themselves. They had shown the galaxy that true civilization was not about avoiding conflict, but about knowing what was worth fighting for. The Deathworlders had answered a simple distress call and started a war, but they had also proven that some wars were worth fighting, and some prices were worth paying. The innocent would sleep safer knowing that somewhere in the darkness guardians kept watch. And if those guardians happened to come from a world that had tried to kill them every day of their lives, that just made them better at their job.